And tonight, we are going to be heavy on trade. In our first story, the African Union says it remains confident that the Continental Free Trade Agreement will come into force by March 2019. 18 out of 22 countries that have signed the agreement have so far successfully obtained local legislative ratification. This is short of the required 22 ratifications. The agreement initially requires members to remove tariffs from 90% of goods, allowing free access to commodities, goods and services across the continent. We'll hear from the Commissioner of Trade and Industry at the AU, Albert Muchanga, in a bit. But first, a report from my colleague Eben Sabote on fears that the March deadline would not be met.
The African Continental Free Trade Agreement has already been ratified by 17 countries on the continent, with 5 more to ratify before its full implementation. The inability of the first and the second largest economies on the continent, Nigeria and South Africa, to ratify the deal has been a major challenge by the African Union. The agreement seeks to promote trade by opening up the markets of various countries to be able to trade duty-free and quota-free. It, however, may be facing another setback, according to some industry analysts, due to the fact that there are a number of national elections to be held by some member nations before the deadline. David Ofosudote is a partner at AB and David.
The deadline is still March. For us to get the 22, then we are likely to miss it. That's why I was talking from that perspective. As at now, 15 have signed, and the reason is with the number of elections that we have by March up to May, many of those who have not signed want to sign it only after the election. If you miss the deadline, it's not the end of the world.
In Ghana, many of the local industries and traders have expressed their readiness to compete with goods coming from other member nations, though there are concerns raised by some business unions that the country could be used as a dumping ground. Chief Executive of Gihog Distilleries, Maxwell Kofi Juma, tells Joy Business he's taking advantage of the deal to enter other markets with their products.
Now with a new free trade in Africa, we're going to every African country, but we are targeting Europe. In fact, this month, they are going. We tell them our drinks are superior. Simplicity.
Meanwhile, Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry, Carlos Ahenkra, has advised manufacturing firms to pay attention to packaging of their products to serve as an added advantage.
We expect the Ghanaian manufacturers to be competitive and be ready for this kind of competition, because you would sit here, you would think that you are able to manufacture, let's say, a watch, a timepiece, or you're able to manufacture some shoes. But there's a company in Egypt who is doing it with a proper quality, better quality. They can bring it here without any duty, and it will challenge and compete with your kind of shoes that you are manufacturing here. So I would take advantage of this opportunity also to let our manufacturers understand that packaging or proper production to give you the necessary visibility and penetration is also very important.
In a recent tweet after Senegal's parliament ratified a deal, Trade and Industry Commissioner of the African Union, Ambassador Albert Muchanga, expressed optimism that the 5 remaining countries will sign the deal before the next African Union summit.
Well, speaking at a news conference in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, Commissioner of Trade and Industry at the AU, Albert Muchanga, said the AU is sticking to the deadline.
So that when she issues a media brief, come and witness the signing ceremony, all of you are going to rush there. So I'm deliberately not going to give you those 2 countries. But it will happen as soon as the summit is underway. The 2 heads of state are ready to sign, and the embassies here have officially written us that they are going to sign. Yes, deadlines are there. We are confident. Like I said, that there are steps in 12 African Union member states at the level of national assemblies to process the recommendations from their cabinets that we would like this agreement to be approved or that by the National Assembly. Out of those 12, we expect 5. And end term now, we are going to get some indication that an approval has been made. And one of them have told us that the National Assembly is aware of the fact that the summit starts on Sunday. They are trying as much as possible to approve. So we are confident that we can have the minimum threshold of 22 by March this year. Because the 21st March is a very, very important day in the history of the African Continental Free Trade Area. It will be the first anniversary. And even in homes, when the baby is 1 year old, there's a lot of excitement. And the member states are aware.
Mr. Muchanga has also been speaking about the AU's concerns about goods from non-African countries flooding markets and affecting local production.
That we need really to celebrate that day with the minimum 22. The question of goods from other countries that are offloaded on the African continent and seem to promote deindustrialization is a matter of concern to us. As we are designing the African Continental Free Trade Area, we are working on a regime which is going to look at questions of rules of origin. My expert on rules of origin is not here. He has told me that the negotiations are proceeding very well. I've been opening the meetings. 80% of the work is done. So there are going to be very, very clear rules on what qualifies to be traded under the African Continental Free Trade Area. If it does not meet those rules of origin provisions, it will not be allowed to trade. We are working on that one. Yes. Nigeria is committed to the African Continental Free Trade Area. The treaty establishing the African Economic Community has the other name of being called the Abuja Treaty. And before the Abuja Treaty, when Africa committed itself to really use the instrument of integration to promote accelerated development, we had the Lagos Plan of Action. So Nigeria is fully committed, no question about that. And they've been very, very candid. They need to undertake broad-based national level consultations so that they bring everybody on board. And the last step in that direction was to carry out a national readiness study. How ready is Nigeria? How ready is Nigeria is to implement the agreement? So work is moving in that direction. And they also realize that when we come together as African economies, we are creating a large market of 1.27 billion people. And every investor knows that when you have such a large market, you intend really to make a lot of money because you're exploiting economies of scale and you reduce the cost of doing business.
All right, so Albert Muchanga there talking about the benefits of free trade. Earlier he was talking about the influx of Western goods onto our markets here in Africa and how it is affecting local production. We want to bring you our poll tonight because we've been asking you, do you think the Africa Continental Free Trade will curb the influx of goods from Western markets? Now, this is what you guys are saying. 37% of you think that it will curb the influx of Western goods from Western markets, and 63% of you are still pessimistic. You think that there will not be any change at all. Well, we want to link up with Joseph Akable, who is in Addis Ababa following the summit there for us. Akable, so we know now that 18 countries have ratified the Continental Free Trade Agreement, and it's left with 4 countries. I guess the question is, between now and March, are they really going to sign on to the Continental Free Trade Agreement? What are you hearing?
Well, Darryl, it may be a bit more difficult than the AU expects it to be. I mean, listening to the commissioner, he's confident saying that they're going to secure. But one thing that we need to take note of is the fact that even in the countries that we are talking about, only 14 of them have been able to present evidence of successfully rectifying it in their various countries to the AU. So there are some of them that they are expecting to receive it. What makes it significant again is the fact that you have about 45 countries that have signed on to the agreement, but they've not been able to secure the local ratification. That is because it is proving very difficult in their countries to convince their legislative bodies to say that we are taking off as much as 90% tariffs of the products to open up our markets. There's a bit about revenue loss, and that is why the question about Nigeria was directly asked of the commissioner. So in terms of the body language of the commissioner and the expectation, they hope to achieve that, but in terms of the signals that we are picking, it may be pretty much difficult for them to get the numbers. In fact, the commissioner went a step further to say that the threshold is just a minimum that they are looking at, and that they are certain that they can secure more than the threshold. But there are lots of implications. Elections are up. People are concerned about how that may affect the local economies in the various countries, whether they will have enough funds to be able to manage the affairs of the countries as they seek re-election bids. So those are the things that have come up. But in terms of Ghana, Ghana has actually been commended because Ghana was one of the first countries to ratify it. In fact, if you recall, our parliament was actually on recess. They were recalled to come and approve that particular agreement. Then it was sent. So in terms of Ghana, it appears all is set with regards to this particular agreement. Just awaiting whether the AU is able to meet the threshold for it to kick in.
All right, Joseph, in the meantime, we know that the AU interns have been at work. What is the progress of work so far up till March, when we anticipate that the free trade agreement will come into force?
So between now and March, the AU, in fact, they set up an advocacy group for the whole free trade agreement. They are expecting to continue engaging all the countries on the continent. In fact, the target, they say, is to get all countries on the African continent, all countries belonging to the African Union, to get on board. So they are going to explain to them. They are going to make arguments about the market that will be having access to. The AU says they know the fears that a lot of those countries are not into the export of commodities, and that is the actual fear. So if you are not exporting that much and you are importing so much and you lift off the tariffs, it obviously means that your other neighbors who are exporting so much will end up getting and benefiting more from that agreement. So those are the kind of engagements that the African Union, in terms of what steps they need to take practically, they intend to hope to ensure that this comes into force.
Well, we had bits of the press conference there where Albert Muchanga was talking about the influx of Western products onto the African market and how that is affecting local production. And I guess the feeling is that when the Continental Free Trade comes into force, it will curb some of these things. Now, we have been running a poll, and people are not so convinced that that will be the reality. Isn't that a concern that has also come up?
It is. In fact, the Chinese products were mentioned directly because people said that they had lots of Chinese products in their countries, and that question came from a Kenyan journalist. So it appears that Ghana is not the only country that is facing that situation. The response from him suggests that the AU, as it stands, doesn't have any firm position on it, because in fact he said they are still having discussions as to the extent to which they could allow such goods move on the market. What we need to also take into consideration is the fact that a lot of the African countries we know draw largely on such goods from non-African markets. And this free trade is to allow commodities to move across the continent. So the AU is here to decide which type of goods they may be allowing to move around and which type they may not be allowing. So it appears that as it stands, the EU does not have a clear-cut path as to how it will be addressing that concern, but they've given the assurance that they are having that series of engagements. So they've put together a team of experts that are looking together to ensure that they get the fine prints to ensure that the African countries benefit from it, especially when they are losing or they stand to lose so much in terms of revenue, and all they have in return is a large market that they simply have to take advantage of only through massive exports.
And while we talk about free trade, I bet a conversation about freeing our skies would come up tomorrow when we expect that the AU address issues about the aviation sector. What are we hearing? What are we expecting the AU to say about that?
So there's been some talks about a way of the the regional body getting into the aviation sector and trying to come out with a framework that could streamline the activities in the various countries. The African Union is increasingly trying to be more involved in the various trade activities that goes on in the various countries. So they consider aviation to be very, very important, for which reason the commissioner has agreed to address a news conference so that the various concerns, the policy document updates will be given. Then president from various African countries will be allowed to ask direct questions about what steps the AU is taking in terms of country specific and what they intend to do about that. There will be another bit about renewable energy as well. This has also come up strongly in terms of recently, and because energy is very important to businesses, and you know that there are many African countries where there are energy challenges. People don't have stable power supply to do business, and that makes the cost of doing business very high. So the AU is also pushing for renewable energy, and we're expecting that an update will be given on the steps that the AU has taken so far in terms of the policy document. The bit about agriculture will also come up strongly. The commissioner responsible will also be speaking about that. So in terms of tomorrow's activities, we can expect to hear about renewable energy, we can talk about agriculture, then also talk about aviation.
Great insights, great perspective. Thanks very much indeed, Joseph. We'll come back to you later on for updates from the AU Summit there in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Thanks very much indeed, Joseph Akable. Now, turning to other news now. Premium Motors, the authorized dealer of Renault cars in Ghana, has unveiled the all-new 2019 Renault Duster. According to CEO of Premium Motors, the move is part of the company's commitment to deliver improved services to the Ghanaian market. At the official launch of the automobile, CEO Jihad Hijazi also hinted of plans to set up an assembling plant in Ghana. There is more in this report.
The much improved all-new 2019 Renault Duster, dubbed the Unstoppable SUV, promises car lovers a new dynamic exterior design, new modern interior, and super exciting features at an affordable price. Some of its upgraded features include a revised engine capacity of 1.6 litres, the push-button smart system, electric power steering, rear parking sonar sensors, as well as a 17-inch diamond-cut Maldives alloy wheel, among other incredible features. Jihad Hijazi is the CEO of Premium Motors.
With our new Duster, we've not only worked on the shape of the vehicle, as you've seen, the shape itself, the aesthetics have been drastically improved. The engineering has been drastically improved, the interior has been drastically improved, and most importantly, the price has gone down from the previous Duster, whereby, you know, the previous high-end Duster was retailing around $23,500 to $24,000. Our top-of-the-line, state-of-the-art new Duster is around $22,500.
He further noted the company is finalizing discussions to also commence assembling its cars here in Ghana.
You know, my partners from Renault France were here last week to meet with the presidents, and the intention has been made clear that we intend to establish a plant and to produce made in Ghana Renaults.
The new Renault Duster sells between $17,850 and $22,500. Alternatively, previous owners of Renault cars are allowed to come in for a swap under certain terms and conditions. For Joy Business, Sheila Tamaklo.
In other news tonight, poultry production in the country is set to receive a substantial boost with the introduction of relatively locally manufactured incubators. A teaching assistant at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology Department of Animal Science, David Wakpal, is behind this new development. Love FM's Kwesi Deborah speaks with him on how the technology works.
It's 6 a.m. and PhD student Albert Mi Amatego attends to his coop at his project site, which produces 300 eggs a day. Though he is happy to be a supplier for 5 traders, acquisition of birds remains a challenge. Like many farmers, Albert's flock is raised from imported chicks.
From all the way from Belgium, and the price is very high. In the local market, you get the price being about 4.7 Ghana cedis. On the international market, to get those from outside, the least cost you can get, that's the minimum price, is about 5.7. So the difference between the local and then the imported is 1 cedi, which is a huge money. From Christmas, for instance, you need to book well advanced before you can get them. If you book a month late, you get.
Global Agricultural Information Network estimates Ghana's 2017 total domestic supply of broiler meat was less than 25% at 35,000 tons. This is in spite of increasing demand, while imports increased by 14,000 tons to reach 158,000 tons in that year. Dr. Jacob Ahassan Hamidu is senior lecturer at the Department of Animal Science at KNUST.
Now it has shot up to around over 200,000 metric tons. Yeah, there are various problems coming to the poultry industry that really leads to this importation and little production within. And that total consumption that I gave you is only for broiler meat and not necessarily on egg consumption. And we need a lot to also produce our own eggs.
Apart from these factors, supply of quality day-old chicks is crucial for increased poultry production. Access to the day-old chicks with low disease risk has been difficult.
As of 2016 again, a total of close to 5 million day-old chicks were imported into Ghana. And then there was only about 2 million day-old chicks that were being produced locally. So if we put that together around that time, the total demand, let's say, of day-old chicks in the system would be around 8 million. Currently, we are doing around 10 million or more. The main problem, chick quality. Farmers feel like the kind of chicks that they receive from the local hatcheries are of poor quality.
This is where good quality incubators come in, but mostly imported and expensive. David is a Greek biotechnology graduate who has been researching into affordable ways of producing incubators. The project, which started in his room in his third year at the university, has paid off. He now produces affordable and equally efficient incubators comparable to foreign brands.
It has a hatching percentage of over 80%. And compared to the imported one, the price of production is very low, about half of the imported one. And the advantages it has over the imported one, this one can be serviced here in Ghana because it was built by engineers in Ghana here. And also it's adapted to our climate.
For a bonus, he has placed rollers beneath the main compartment, so farmers will have no difficulty moving it around. So far, apart from producing one for the department, he has more than 5 clients across the country. David is still researching into ways of improving the machine, which brings relief to many local farmers. Reporting for JoyNews, Kwesi Deborah.
That's very impressive. And as we conclude tonight, just want to remind you that on February 12th, there'll be a Joy Business Knowledge Series on taxes powered by PricewaterhouseCoopers. It's happening at Movenpick Ambassador Hotel. It promises to be an interesting session. Remember, the time is 8:30 a.m. The hashtag is IntelliTax. There's more news on our website, joybusinessnews.com. Thanks for watching. We're back same time tomorrow.